All right, Middle-Aged White Guy Reacts back again today with another video for you. And in today's video, we're going to have the 2023 Cleveland Browns season preview. Now, I get it. This is a music reaction channel. This is not the content you guys come for. A lot of you aren't even going to click on it. That's okay. If you're a Browns fan, though, and you stumbled on this video and you're like, who is this guy? He's a music reaction channel. Why should I even watch this video? You need to watch this video. Stick around and watch it, all right? And I'll tell you why. Last year I did this video, and everything I said in that video happened and came to fruition and was exactly how I called it. I called that the defensive line was going to be a huge issue, and the inability to stop the run was going to essentially ruin a lot of games for us. I knew that Brissett cannot play from behind, or at least I shouldn't say cannot play from behind, but couldn't bring us back when he gets down a couple of scores. It just wasn't going to happen. And that Deshaun was going to be very rusty, and there was no path for the playoffs from the beginning of last year. And like I said, I already made this video. It's documented. It's there. There's going to be a playlist linked at the end of this video with my other Browns related content. You want to fact check me? Go back and look at that video and see that I called the season exactly how it was going to go from the very beginning. I identified all the holes that were going to be problems, and that's what they were. So, guys like Mason Talks and Quincy that do this full time, okay, I had it better than them. All right, I love those guys. I love watching them. They have great insight and football knowledge, and they're very strong Browns related content comes out of those two guys, and some others. It's not just them. There's several other guys that are really good. But I'm just telling you, Browns fans, I'm right there with them. Now, like I said, this season is going to be a lot. Last year, I did an entire roster breakdown, an entire schedule breakdown, and we went over everything, and we figured out what was going to happen. This year, it's way simpler than that, okay? It boils down to two things. I think we all know those two things. Number one, how Deshaun Watson performs, and number two, how Kevin Stefanski performs. Essentially, there are no excuses this year. We have filled the holes that we needed filled. Andrew Berry saw that his plan for the defensive line wasn't working. Okay, he was not drafting effective players for the position, and we were very bare there. All right, so he signed three big free agents. Zadarius Smith, that other guy with the funky name, and the defensive tackle whose name actually escapes me right now. But they're all very solid players, and they're really going to help shore up that defensive line. Now the linebackers, okay, they're still an issue. That we have JOK and we have JOK. Okay. Phillips just got hurt, tore another pec. We have Walker back, right? He made it through camp unscathed. So he's at least a solid veteran to stick next to JOK, but we're thin there. We're very thin. So if there's going to be a problem on the defense, it's going to be in that area. I'm interested to see how Thornhill's going to do at safety, and there's another guy we got there. But either way, I think we're going to be better at safety than we were a year ago, which will be a plus, okay? And that should shore up the secondary with, you still have Greg Newsome, who is not what we thought he was, but is still relatively solid at the position. And MJ Emerson was fantastic last year, and I expect him to be just as good. Couple that with Ward and some of the other depth pieces we have there, and we're good in the secondary. We're good in the secondary. We're good at the defensive line. Linebacker's going to hold us back a little bit, and that just might be what keeps us out of the top 10 defensively. But other than that, I think the defensive unit as a whole should be able to accomplish what we need to give our offense a chance to score more points than the other team, okay? Because that's what it's going to boil down to, okay? I don't think we're going to be holding a lot of teams to 17, 10, 3, even 21. I think we're going to give up between 20 and 24 points a game still. Maybe not, though. I mean, if that defensive line is just super dominant and just collapsing that pocket, we might be in for something very special. But that linebacking position gives me pause for concern. Offensively, we have the same team coming back, minus Hunt plus Elijah Moore. All right. Donovan Peoples-Jones had a very solid year all the way around. And did he end up with 1,000? I think he ended up with 1,000 or just shy of it. So we have Cooper still, Amari Cooper. Who had a fantastic year last year. He gave us Jarvis Landry type production. All right, healthy Jarvis Landry is what he gave us, and it was what I said at the beginning of the year is all he needed to be. Last year, I said, he just needs to be healthy Jarvis Landry for us, and that's exactly what he was, plus a little extra. So you have Cooper coming back. You have Njoku coming back, who had another solid year. One big game really kind of skewed his stats a little bit, but overall, still a real solid year. Then you have DPJ, coming in. He is an established number 2 receiver at this point. Yeah, I think you could safely say that. From what we've seen, he's gotten better every year. He catches everything thrown to him. He's always covered real tight. I don't think he can really get the separation like a number 1 can, but, or a speedy, slot guy. But he's that number 2 receiver who's going to run his routes, be where he's supposed to be, and catch the ball when it comes to him. So then you have Elijah Moore now added to that mix. And, people are expecting him to kind of take over for DPJ. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you keep him in a third receiver type of role, and, you let him get 600-700 yards and 4, 5, 6 touchdowns. Just, yeah, as a third, option on the field during passing plays. Obviously, losing Hunt kind of hurts, but not really, okay, because Stefanski just refused to use him last year. And I don't think Stefanski has used him well when paired with Chubb at all the entire time. There's no excuse having those two backs, and especially last year, having the quarterback that we had at the beginning of the year, who Brissett did amazing, okay, for what he is and what he ended up accomplishing for us, did a fantastic job. But, Hunt and Chubb needed to see the field at the same time, okay? Not all the time. It was good that they kind of rotated and keep them fresh or whatever, but, there was no excuse to not have a half dozen plays a game that had both Chubb and Hunt on the field at the same time. And, maybe you're setting up something big for later in the game with those kind of formations. But that just never came to fruition. So losing him hurts, but does it really? No, because we didn't really use him effectively. So you still have Chubb, who's hands down the best runner of this generation. If you don't believe me, just look at his stats, man. The guy has averaged over 5 yards a carry his entire career so far. That is unheard of. There's some guys who have averaged over 5 yards a carry for their career. Most are quarterbacks. Michael Vick, Randall Cunningham, I believe. And then there's, I think, Priest Holmes or Jamal Anderson. One of those two, I can't remember which one averaged over 5 yards a carry, I believe. Was it Priest? No, I don't believe. You'd have to check it. But essentially, he had a good, solid stretch of years where he bumped up his average. But in other years, he was averaging, 4 yards or whatever. Chubb has 5 yards a carry, and he's like amongst the league leaders every year in yards after contact. So it's not just he's getting these big wide open holes and bowling, running untouched down the field. Like he has to bowl through them, right? And drag people another 3 or 4 yards to get the averages that he's having. So, our running back position is still fantastic, and even if, Chubb goes down, all right, let's say he gets dinged up. Sometimes he gets dinged up. He misses 3 or 4 games. I think with our offensive line and the Jerome Ford and some of the backs we have behind him, it'll be enough. Okay. But Watson's going to have to run more in those games. Okay. So you get Watson running a little bit more in those games, keeping the chains moving. And it's effectively the same as having Chubb out there. Sort of, it at least keeps the offense from having to make drastic changes and just go all out passing and spreading the field. So you could still do like, clock management kind of stuff, trying to drain clock and what have you. And Watson's big enough to pick up short yardage, sneaks and whatnot. So the running back position should be fine. Even if Chubb takes an injury, I would still prefer to have Hunt there, backing him up. But it is what it is. Tight ends are essentially the same group coming back. I think they added a guy there who was a good, solid tight end. I think it was a blocking tight end, if I remember correctly, but could be mistaken on that. So offensively, the line, the tight ends, the receivers, the running backs are all essentially the same thing coming back. Then you just have Watson and DTR instead of Brissett, and then waiting, until the end of the season for Watson. DTR, fantastic preseason. That kid looks, he looks pretty good. He looks pretty damn good. Interesting to see what he will become. Obviously, whatever he becomes, it won't be here. He might back up Watson for a little bit, but this is going to be a guy that you eventually trade for a piece down the road because, like Green Bay used to do when they had Favre. And this is if Watson goes well. Okay, this is assuming Watson becomes 2020 Watson and not 2022 Watson. You let DTR develop for a little bit. He sees some action, has some success in the season, maybe filling in for Watson a game or two. And then you trade that off for like a second round pick like 2-3 years from now to a team desperate for a starter. And, use that asset to fill another hole that we might have at that time. But I think that's an excellent pick. I think he's going to be, as good as a Josh Dobbs backing us up. I think if Watson goes down, you're kind of in a very bad position at that point, regardless. So I don't think it matters if we had Dobbs or Mond back there. I think DTR will be just fine. So yeah, the entire season is going to come down to Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski, his coaching decisions. He had some questionable calls, and hindsight is 2020. But when you're screaming not to do something before the play happens, and he does what you tell him not to do, and it doesn't work, it's kind of not really hindsight at that point. But I don't have those cases documented and on my YouTube playlist for you guys to see, so I can't really pull that card. But yeah, he just. Some of the risks he takes are worth it and they work out, and other ones end up biting us in the ass. And I guess that's kind of the trade-off you're making. But like some of the times the risks he would take, like going for it on a fourth down or trying to get a touchdown instead of a field goal, for that point of the game didn't really make sense. And then when it came down to the end of the game, you realize that those 3 points would have been huge. So, it's kind of, you take the good with the bad with that, but it has to work. It has to work this year. Or I'm sorry, we're going to be looking at another, regime change and, probably rebuild, which, is not fun. I don't know if I have the patience for another, 4 or 5 year rebuild. This should be it, guys. This should be it. We have the pieces. We have the horses. And it all boils down to number 4. What kind of Deshaun are we getting? Are we getting Deshaun at the end of last year? Or are we going to get Deshaun from 2020? He doesn't even have to be 2020 Deshaun. He has to give us 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 12 or less interceptions. If he does that, I think the rest of the team is good enough. That'll get us into the playoffs. That's still not good enough for the talent level of this team. I really think we should be AFC Championship game or bust. I'm not saying you have to win that game, but I think you need to advance. Okay, you need to advance kind of deep. And depending on how like a divisional round goes or something, and who the opponent is, maybe there's a little wiggle room there to cut them some slack. But other than that, getting to the playoffs, squeaking into the playoffs is not good enough for this team. This team needs to excel. And the only way they're going to excel is if Watson is 2020 Watson. That's 4,000 yards. That's 30 plus touchdowns. That's 10 or less interceptions. If he gives us that, the sky's the limit for this team. If he's going to give us, Baker Mayfield numbers, 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, we can make the playoffs. We might be able to win a game. If he is a shell of himself and he gives you what he gave us last year, it's a 5, 6 win team, 7 wins if you're lucky, maybe 8 you squeak out, and then everybody's gone this year. I'm sorry, you cannot keep Stefanski and Barry for that matter, especially if like something wild happens in Tampa Bay and Baker has like a crazy season, and you have this quarterback that you traded 3 first rounders for and gave 250 million, and he's just the same as the guy that you had, that didn't cost you anything but the draft pick you initially used for him, and he would have gotten paid a little bit, so he'd be making 20, 30 plus million a year if he stayed with us. But significantly cheaper still than what we have in Watson. So Watson has to be significantly better than what we got from Baker in our playoff year for this all to make sense and for this team to go where it needs to go. And I think it could happen, but as a Browns fan, I don't hold my breath. All right, I would not bet the mortgage on Deshaun being exactly what he was a couple of years ago. Okay, I hope it happens. Absolutely hope it happens. And if he does, like I said, this is a 12, 13, 14 win team and deep playoff run. If not, you're looking anywhere from 5 to 10 wins, depending on what Deshaun you get. It all is going to rest on him, and to a little bit lesser extent, Kevin Stefanski. But there it is. There's your 2023 Cleveland Browns season preview. And like I said, take this stuff to heart because I nailed it last year. So there you go. That'll do it. That'll be the video. Peace.